I never imagined I'd become the center of this neighborhood's chaos, but here we are, tangled in a story I could never have predicted. It all kicked off with a notification on my phone, an alert that usually meant groceries had arrived, but instead, it became the first clue in a bizarre game I never wanted to play. I watched the footage on my doorbell camera, frozen in disbelief. There, unmistakably, was Deborah Wilson, our HOA president, known to us all as Karen, sneaking onto my porch with a nervous glance over her shoulder. She wore oversized sunglasses and a visor, her movements quick and furtive, snatching my 2 grocery bags with reckless abandon and disappearing across my lawn like a thief in broad daylight. The strange part, she had no idea she was caught. The camera was recording her every move, every glance, every hasty retreat. I replayed the footage multiple times, feeling a mixture of shock and a strange sense of vindication. For weeks, I'd noticed small items, missing an apple here, a carton of eggs there, and I'd assumed delivery errors, forgetfulness, or maybe just my own paranoia. But this was something else entirely. Deborah Wilson Karen had been the first neighbor to welcome me to Oakwood Estates, handing me a thick binder of HOA rules and a warning about maintaining neighborhood standards. She had visited my house twice, pointing out that my lawn was a 1/4 inch too high and that my mailbox needed repainting in the exact shade of Oakwood cream prescribed in the bylaws, and now she was stealing my groceries. It was almost laughable, yet infuriating. Hesitated, torn between confronting her directly or letting the evidence speak for itself. I chose the latter. I forwarded the video to the local police department's non-emergency email, along with a brief explanation. I also sent a polite note to the other HOA board members, alerting them to the strange activity on my property. I didn't expect much, but I wanted to follow proper channels. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing non-stop, neighbors messaging, calling, sharing stories. Turns out, I wasn't the only one missing deliveries. The Johnsons down the street had lost stakes, Mrs. Green's medication had vanished twice, and the elderly couple on the corner had their prescriptions stolen. It seemed Karen had been busy, and everyone had been too scared or too embarrassed to speak up. That evening, a police cruiser appeared outside Karen's house, a stately colonial with a perfectly manicured lawn and an air of quiet pride. I had a clear view from my home office window as 2 officers approached her front door. I watched her answer, clutching what looked suspiciously like a carton of oat milk, the same item on my grocery list. Her face shifted from confusion to indignation as the officers spoke to her. The next day I knew trouble was coming. Karen stormed up to my door at 7:30 in the morning, her face flushed and angry. I was still half asleep when the doorbell rang. There she was, arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently. "I know what you did," she snapped, voice dripping with disdain. "You sent that ridiculous video to the police and the HOA. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was?" I kept my cool. "Good morning, Deborah. Would you like to come in and discuss this like adults?" I offered, expecting her to refuse. But she stepped inside without a word, eyes narrowing. "There's nothing to discuss," I said. "That video is clearly edited. Anyone with half a brain can see I didn't steal your groceries." I pointed to the footage on my phone. "I drive a Mercedes, I have an alibi. I even offered to help you carry in your own groceries. Yet here you are, accusing me." She scoffed, trying to regain control. "I don't appreciate being falsely accused. I'm the HOA president. My reputation is everything." She paused, then suddenly glanced at her phone. I saw her expression flicker, the telltale sign she was planning something. Just then, my doorbell camera pinged again. I looked down. They were delivering my replacement groceries. Karen saw the notification and froze, her face drained of color. In a flash, she muttered, "I left something in my car," and turned to leave. I followed her outside, standing on the porch as she bent down to pick up my bags. The delivery person, still nearby, looked confused. "Is there a problem with the delivery?" they asked. Karen quickly adjusted her visor. "Just helping my neighbor," she said with a forced smile. "He has a bad back, don't you, dear?" I responded calmly, "My back is fine. And these are my groceries, just like the ones you took yesterday, and probably the week before." The delivery person, sensing the tension, hurried into their car and drove off. Her face played through a rapid succession of expressions, fake concern, anger, panic, before she recovered. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," she said, attempting to regain control. "It was an honest mistake. Sometimes deliveries get mixed up. I thought those groceries yesterday were mine." I nodded thoughtfully. "Except that my name and address are on the receipt, and you didn't order any groceries yesterday, did you?" Her face burned again. She looked desperate now, her composure slipping. Before I could say more, a police cruiser pulled up again, same officers from earlier. They stepped out and Karen stiffened visibly. One of them spoke. "Mrs. Wilson, we have a few more questions about the incident we discussed yesterday." What followed was a scene I'll never forget. The officers entered her house. Later I learned they found multiple packages with shipping labels, addressed to other neighbors, including my missing apples and coffee beans. Her denial crumbled as neighbors came forward with security footage, showing her taking packages on 2 separate occasions. Her story changed from outright denial to confusion, then to claiming she was collecting misdelivered items to return them. The real shocker came when they mentioned a missing prescription, medication from an elderly neighbor's porch, a controlled substance. Her face went pale. She mumbled something about keeping the neighborhood tidy, but her tone was hollow. When they asked about the medication, her defenses broke completely. That afternoon, the neighborhood watched as Karen was taken away, her posture defeated, her designer clothes now seeming out of place. She wasn't handcuffed, but her head was bowed, her usual confidence shattered. She looked around at the neighbors, some standing quietly, others staring in disbelief, and called out, "This is all a misunderstanding." But the officers had enough. She was charged with multiple counts of petty theft, specifically stealing medication which carried serious penalties. Her court hearing was swift. She was ordered to pay restitution, serve probation, and do community service. The HOA held an emergency meeting. They voted unanimously to remove her as president. Her reign of control ended, her reputation in ruins. In Denise's court, her facade cracked. Tears streaked her makeup as she looked at the neighbors she'd tormented for years. "This will ruin me," she whispered, voice trembling. "My clients, my reputation. This will destroy everything." The judges. Words echoed in my mind. "You should have considered consequences before helping yourself to others' property." As she was led away, she caught my eye for a fleeting moment, small, defeated, no longer the powerful HOA queen. For the first time, I felt like I belonged, not because I followed every rule, but because I'd stood up when it mattered. I'd uncovered the truth, fought back, and in doing so finally reclaimed my neighborhood from her shadow. The drama was over, but the story of Oakwood Estates would be remembered. How one person's courage exposed the lies, and how justice finally took its place. As the police cruiser pulled away from her house, Karen Wilson stood on the curb, her shoulders hunched, her face streaked with tears and makeup smudged from her frantic struggle. Her designer outfit looked out of place amid the chaos, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled. The neighbors watched in stunned silence, their eyes filled with a mixture of shock, relief, and something darker, satisfaction. She looked around desperately, trying to grasp what had just happened, but the weight of her actions pressed down on her, crushing her usual composure. Inside the house, the officers had already begun their search. They moved through her pristine kitchen, flipping through drawers, inspecting shelves, and pulling out package after package. I watched from my window, heart pounding. The evidence was undeniable now. My missing groceries, the apples, the coffee beans, all sitting on her counter, exposed. The officers found the packages with receipts addressed to other neighbors, confirming her thefts. Her protests, her denial, all crumbled beneath the weight of the truth. She had tried to lie, claiming she was merely collecting misdelivered items to return them, but the officers weren't buying it. The security footage from neighbors showed her taking packages on multiple occasions. The medication from the elderly couple's porch was the final nail. Her face had gone pale, her excuses evaporating in the cold truth. She had been caught red-handed, and her empire, built on rules and intimidation, was collapsing right in front of everyone. She was led outside and into the police car, her heels clicking on the pavement. Her eyes darted around, searching for allies, for someone to save her. But all she saw were the neighbors, some with arms crossed, others with their phones out, capturing every moment. Her once powerful stance was gone, replaced by a defeated slump. She looked at the crowd and called out, her voice trembling, "This is all a misunderstanding." But no one responded. The silence was deafening. The officers placed her in the back seat, and the car pulled away, leaving her small figure shrinking into the distance. The neighborhood slowly exhaled, the tension easing as the threat of her reign of terror finally dissolved. But I knew this wasn't just about theft. It was about the mask she had worn for years, the control, the manipulation, the fear she had instilled in everyone here. That mask had cracked, and beneath it was a woman exposed, vulnerable, and utterly defeated. I stepped away from my window, feeling a strange mixture of relief and power. For the first time, I saw this neighborhood not as a place of rules and fear, but as a community that could stand up, fight back, and expose the truth. I had done that. I had uncovered the lies, revealed the deception, and finally broken the chain of control she had held over us all. But what came next would be even more shocking, because I knew Deborah Wilson, Karen. She wasn't just going to disappear quietly. No. She had made enemies, and her downfall was just the beginning of what would be a long, dark storm. The truth was out, but the fallout was only starting, and I was ready for whatever would come next. The police cruiser disappeared into the distance, leaving Karen slumped in the back seat, her face a mixture of shock and despair. The neighbors had watched her collapse, their eyes heavy with unspoken judgment. I stood silently on my porch, feeling a strange weight lift from my shoulders. For months I had been powerless, watching things go missing, feeling the eyes of the neighborhood judge and judge me. But now everything had changed. The truth was out, and her empire of lies was crumbling. Inside her house, the officers had finished their search. They had found the stolen packages, the medication, the receipts, all undeniable evidence. Her protests had faded into silence, replaced by a blank, defeated stare. She had tried to deny, to spin stories, but the facts had spoken louder. The IMB neighborhood secrets, hidden behind her perfect facade, were now exposed for everyone to see. As I watched her get into the car, I felt a strange calm, like a storm had finally passed. The fear, the intimidation, the control she wielded, it was all gone. The mask she wore for years was shattered, revealing a woman who had desperately clung to power only to be brought down by her own greed and arrogance. But just as the police car pulled away, a sudden flicker caught my eye. From the corner of my window I saw her glance back, a fleeting, almost desperate look. And then, something odd. A small, crumpled piece of paper slipped from her hand as she was helped into the car. She stared at it for a moment, then quickly looked away. I didn't know what it was, but something told me that her story wasn't over yet. Not entirely. The next day I received a message from a neighbor I barely knew, an anonymous tip. It said, "This is just the beginning. Don't trust everything you see." My heart raced. Was she truly finished, or was this just a cold opening to something darker? I looked around at the neighborhood, now eerily quiet, the streets seemingly holding their breath. Later that evening, I found that crumpled paper on my porch. It was a torn piece of a photograph, an image of her, but not alone. Behind her, faint but unmistakable, was a shadowy figure. A man with a hood, lurking in the background of her life, unseen by everyone. My blood ran cold. That paper was a clue, a warning, or maybe a threat. And then it hit me. Deborah Wilson, the so-called Queen of Oakwood Estates, hadn't been acting alone. Her thefts, her manipulations, her lies, they were part of something much bigger, something she'd been hiding even deeper than her stolen packages. Her reign of terror was just a symptom of a far darker game, played behind the scenes with players I didn't even imagine. I looked at the torn photograph again, heart pounding. If she had a shadowy partner, someone could be waiting to step, and someone even more dangerous, someone who knew her secrets, her vulnerabilities, her weaknesses. And I realized I'd only scratched the surface. In that moment, I understood one thing. This story was far from over. The real nightmare was just beginning. Because the woman who had once looked down on me, who had ruled this neighborhood with fear, was now gone. But the darkness she fought so hard to hide was still lurking, waiting for its next move. And I had just become part of a game I could never fully understand, fighting against shadows that refused to stay in the dark. The silence was deafening, and I knew with absolute certainty that the biggest twist was still coming, the kind that would change everything forever.